right, hey, it's Scott Penfold, and this is another edition of the Loaded Radio podcast. And it's a straight up rock show this week, man, as I'm going to be joined by Dirty Honey frontman Marc Labelle. Now, those guys just wrapping up their tour with MAMMOTH WVH. And throughout 2022, those guys opening for such bands as Guns N' Roses, Kiss, as well Rival Sons. And they're also setting out on a North American tour called the California Dreamin Tour this fall, with supporting act DOROTHY and MARC SATURN. So we'll be talking to Marc in just a few seconds, and then as well coming up on the second portion of the podcast this week, we'll be joined by Loaded Radio's own Johnny Rude. He's going to be joining us live from Las Vegas, Nevada, where we'll be talking about the tragic loss of teenage head guitar player Gord Lewis, who was killed by his own son last week. Gord, just an absolutely incredible guy, a very gentle soul, and a friend of mine who I knew for many years. So we'll definitely be talking about that in the second portion of the podcast this week. But first off, this guy here is the frontman for American rock band Dirty Honey. They hail from Los Angeles, and they've been around since 2017. And I'm talking about singer Marc Labelle. Marc, how you doing, man?
I'm pretty tired, but no worse for wear.
Are you pretty tired? Yeah, you've been obviously been out doing some shows. I'm taking it, obviously.
Yeah, I just got back from Europe like 2 days ago, so I'm a little bit jet lagged and just tour tired, I guess, and all the things that go with it. But no worse for wear, that's for sure.
I completely understand, man. I really want to get into things. First off, the cover version of Prince's "Let's Go Crazy," I think it's kick-ass, man. Great track. What inspired you guys to do that?
That was kind of a collaboration with the NHL and TNT, the NHL and TNT. Their producer, was a fan of the band and had a bit of an understanding of our history with hockey and stuff. So he reached out and was wondering if there was anything we could do for the Winter Classic. They wanted to do sort of a tribute to Prince, and we came up with the idea to do "Let's Go Crazy" and figured out a way to sort of put our own little spin on it. And that was that was really the catalyst for all that. Is my really my affiliation with hockey and fandom for the NHL, and the opportunity was sprung upon us, and we jumped at it. So and it really came down to, can we make this song unique in some sort of way?
Yeah, and you certainly did. I like it. You really did put that Dirty Honey stamp on it, and it sounds fantastic, man. It's a great version.
Thanks, man.
Another great song, man, is the new one, Another Last Time. Also a really cool video there. Tell me a bit about that song. Tell me about that, where that song came from with you guys.
Yeah, that tune came from, it was kind of a COVID write. It was, I just had an acoustic lying around that was an open tuning, and I just started strumming something that was, a little more soulful and that like Stones, Black Crowes sort of vibe. And I really liked it, but it wasn't until I sort of mumbled out the words "Another Last Time" that the song really sort of took shape lyrically. And that was a turning point for writing it, and then it was like, oh, okay, well, I got this great title. Now I can run with a story that kind of writes itself,
Right.
And I kind of left it a little open-ended lyrically. I think "Another Last Time" can speak to a lot of things. It can speak to addiction. It can speak to, going back to the well, like a few too many times in a relationship that's maybe toxic or something. And, it's got a lot of those addictive correlations in the title. So that's kind of what the song was about, but it wasn't about any specific thing, personifying drugs and stuff. And, or vice versa, making something like that sound like a relationship in a lyric.
Now, how about the video itself? How much involvement did you guys have in the production of it? Because it's a great video, man. It's like a little mini movie.
Yeah, thanks. Quite a bit. Kind of all the videos start with a phone call to one of my best friends, the director, Scott Fleischman from A+ Films. It was really fun actually being out in Europe, because he was out there filming Kendrick Lamar, and he had a week off, and he was able to meet up with us out there and do some filming and stuff. And, he's just been passionate about the band for a long time. And he was one of the earliest people I met, period, when I moved to LA. And, to be able to share like the first European tour, you know, at least a leg of it with him was really, really cool because he's been with me since the beginning of this journey. The video starts with a call to him, like, hey, what do you think? Do you have any conceptual like ideas for this tune? You know, and he might take a week to think about it. And then like we go out to lunch and start kicking it around a bit. And we kind of figured, we landed on this concept of, hey, what if there was just a location where all these stories of addiction were playing out at the same time? Like, how do we execute that? And then it's really his job to figure out like how to produce it.
Yeah. And yeah, it was just so well done, man, too. I watched it a few times, actually. It's just really, really cool. Do you see possibly more videos going along the same line of that sort of theatrical base in the future? I
don't know. You know, I think, I don't really care so much about being in the video personally. I think the other guys would like to be in them a little more. So maybe the next one will be like a performance thing, or, you know, it's a tough thing, like to toe the line. Like you don't ever want to be like an actor in a video, really. Like you can't be like, unless you're a great actor, you know?
Right.
But I don't think any of us are. A very good friend who's a great actor and, you know, very successful at being an actor. And when we do anything together, he just starts laughing at me. So it kind of tells me where my skill level's at. But yeah, you know, there's something, you know, maybe the move is to just do a complete 180 and not even stay on the same creative trajectory. You know, I don't know, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there.
Certainly so. Tell me about the experience being on the road with Mammoth. What was that like?
It was cool. You know, we didn't get to, we kind of had a pretty like locked down backstage area. So we kind of both sort of kept to ourselves. And, you know, obviously it was a lot of question marks on COVID at the time. So, you know, we were a little more into like living a somewhat free life than I think they were at the time. But it was great, man. I mean, we got to cross paths with them obviously a ton.
Sure.
Talked to them a bunch, and Wolfie is super nice and obviously a great singer, great guitar player. He's got amazing songs and sounds fucking great, like live, which is, you know, I think that was why we gravitated towards each other so much, is we were like, listen, we're two like younger rock bands that like are doing the live thing. We're not playing the tracks. We're not, you know, we're not cheating in any way. So, you know, it felt really natural to do that. And I definitely had a deep appreciation for him and what he was doing, you know, even though we're kind of two different like styles of rock, I would say, you know, I can definitely really appreciate what he's doing, both like recording wise and live. So he was great, man.
Yeah, he's awesome live. I mean, both you guys are fantastic. I think it was a great double headliner to have you guys go out on the road with him. And you mentioned the significant sound of the band, you know, and the sort of significant sound of rock. I mean, obviously, when I listen to Dirty Honey, I mean, I hear hints of Aerosmith. I hear Led Zeppelin. I mean, was that a natural direction for the band to go, or was that like a deliberate decision that, hey, we're going to go this way, we're going to sound with that classic rock sort of influence, or did it just again come naturally?
You know, it's funny you bring that up because it was like a deliberate thing really early on to avoid it like as much as possible.
Really?
We were like, oh, it sounds too derivative. I wasn't, to be honest. I kind of always wanted to do this thing, like a 4-piece, just straight ahead rock and roll band with like great riffs, a little bluesy, a little soulful, you know, just, it's all the things that I love. Like the bands you just mentioned they're all like my favorite bands. So
certainly
that comes very natural to me. And the other guys kind of wanted to reinvent the wheel, so to speak, a little more than I did. And they kind of, you know, we kind of push back on the, you know, the sound of the band a little bit. At the beginning, it had a little more like Muse influence in there. And like, they were looking to push rock and roll like forward. And it became pretty clear, like the best way to like push rock and roll forward was to do what is authentic to us, which is, you know, bluesy, catchy rock and roll. Like that's fun. So once When I'm Gone, like started going, that was a nice indicator that we were like doing the right thing. So, that is truly what's authentic. And if you ask everybody like, hey, who are your favorite bands? You know, they're the same. If we all picked 5, like 3 of those 5 would be the same in everybody's list. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, I think it does come naturally, but we definitely fought it early on.
I totally understand, man. And you know, in that vein, in your opinion, do you think there's currently a new wave of classic rock happening right now?
You know, if you asked me that 3 years ago, I would have said yes. I don't think rock can be classified as classic unless classic means one of a kind, right? So like everything you hear on classic rock radio is classic in nature, because it's, even though it's rock, it's unique to itself. Like whether that's Lynyrd Skynyrd, AC/DC, Zeppelin, Aerosmith, the Stones, all those bands have their complete own identity within the rock like sphere, which makes them classic, right? So I don't know. I think I don't know. I was expecting more of an explosion of rock than I think we're seeing, but I'm still hopeful because like in LA, there's a lot of like super young, like 18, 19, 20-year-old bands that I've been going to see that are like doing like the Sunset Strip thing again. So it's encouraging.
Yeah. So in your opinion then, and with the whole, you know, big Gene Simmons quote from years ago that rock is dead, do you believe that?
I got to tell him that I don't believe that on this last tour because we opened for Kiss. But
oh, nice.
Yeah, man. No, I gave Gene a lot of shit in interviews previous to this one, and I hadn't seen them play in a long time. And getting to open for them, man, I obviously disagree with that statement. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing. But I have to say, man, if there's anybody that can comment on the state of rock and roll, it's that guy, because they are still fucking great, and they kind of blew my mind when we played with them. So they were super nice, and their crew was super accommodating and very sweet. So we had a like unbelievable experience opening for Kiss.
So what did Gene actually say when you confronted him with that? I'm curious. He
just laughed, and then he told our drummer that he had really nice nipples and that he was going to be famous in Germany. So. So
that's
we
excellent.
Got out of that. But yeah, Paul Stanley took a lot of time with us and was very complimentary. And you know, I obviously returned, you know, the compliments to him because we watched him like 2 nights before, and we did like back-to-back shows with them, and they were just, man, they were fucking great. I gotta say, they were really a great band that is like timeless and is still doing it like at a high level. So
oh yeah, well, it's Kiss, man. Yeah, Kiss rules.
I know, and like you forget that, you know, you're like, oh, am I gonna go see? These guys are obviously older, but it was fucking, I loved it. I was shocked how much I loved it. So
now I want to ask about you and John Noto. Like, do you guys have a specific songwriting process together?
Not really. I mean, it can come any which way. I mean, Justin writes a lot of stuff. You know, I'll write a lot of stuff on my own. John will write a lot of stuff on his own, and you know, it's just about finding your own like authentic spin on whoever shows you something, you know. So it could all happen like together in a room together. We could just make something up and all of a sudden we have a song, or like it's any way, you know, just so long as you get to the finish line, that's all we care about.
Certainly so, man. You know, and even just swinging back to mentioning, you know, the whole classic rock thing and bands you opened for, I got to bring up opening for The Who in 2017. How was that experience?
Again, like it was really great. I mean, that's a legendary band. That was like the first show that they did with that orchestral like tour anywhere. So they were definitely a little stressed out that night, but we got to meet the guys and they were obviously very nice, and it was super early on in our careers.
Yeah.
So that was like really blowing our minds to meet like Roger Daltrey and Pete, but we got to meet their managers and stuff, and they were all super nice to us and had great things to say about the band, and you know, and then they were the ones who were responsible for introducing us to our heroes, obviously, and they couldn't have been nicer. So we've had some pretty good luck along the way, and some really good experiences, especially with our predecessors.
Yeah, you've certainly shared the stage with some of the biggest names from, you know, if you want to even call it that era, which I think is just been so awesome for you guys, man.
Yeah, I mean, there's only a few like boxes to check left for me on that list, and I say, you know, like people are like, who's the dream, like what band is like on your list of dream bands to open for? And I'm like, obviously I love headlining the most. That's sure, those are always like the most fun, the best shows, but the Rolling Stones and Aerosmith and AC/DC are still the ones that I've yet to do, and I would absolutely do it in a heartbeat. I'd do it for free. I would do it just for the story. So
Of course, now speaking about hitting the road, though, you got the tour with Dorothy, California Dreamin Tour coming up. What do you think of Dorothy's stuff? You like her?
Yeah, so we did a show, actually when Wolfgang had to cancel a few shows because of COVID at the end of our tour, we linked up with Dorothy and, she was nice enough to step in and do one with us, as like a co-headline somewhere. I think it was Charlotte, I want to say.
Yeah.
But, I'd seen her play before. She opened for Greta Van Fleet a few years back, and I was lucky enough to catch that tour and thought she was great there. And I knew her drummer at the time. So got super hooked up at the show and, had great seats and got to, be, up close and personal for her and for Greta. And I loved them both, honestly. So, and then to see her, open up for us on that last tour with Wolfgang when he bailed, it just was another reassurance that she can really sing her ass off, and she's got really great tunes, and she's just a badass. I mean, she's a total badass to begin with, personality wise. So, we're real excited about it. And the other band too, that's on with us, MAMMOTH Saturn, is a great band out of Detroit that we're real excited to help, show to the world. And it's going to be a great run. And, we're looking forward to it.
Now, after the tour, obviously, which is coming up, what are some more plans coming up for Dirty Honey?
Yeah, I think there's some stuff in the works, maybe going to Australia. Obviously, we got to get back to Europe again. And the big thing is, getting in the studio and making some more music. And we've got a lot of stuff kicking around that we've been working on as much as we can. It was a little tougher to work on songs touring in Europe because our schedule was so insane. It was like 35 shows in 40 days or something like that. It was crazy.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So, with like 16-hour drives in between. So we were pretty up against it. But I think we'll take a week here. And we have a gig this weekend with Sammy Hagar and his band, The Circle. That's going to be fun.
Cool, man.
So we're going to do that. We're going to go home, take a week, and then, write and rehearse till we hit the road again. So that's definitely on our, not on our back burner. It's like, it's being moved from the back burner to the front.
I gotcha.
Marc,
thanks so much for taking the time today, man. It's been awesome talking to you.
No worries, man. I appreciate it. And we'll see you out on the road.
Certainly will, man. All the best to you.
You too.
And there's Marc Labelle from the band Dirty Honey. And don't forget, those guys hitting the road this fall for the California Dreamin Tour, along with Dorothy and MAMMOTH Saturn. A phenomenal straight-up rock band, man. Just an awesome band who really encapsulate that classic rock sound and vibe. But hey, my name is Scott Penfold, and this is now the portion of the podcast where I'm going to be joined by Loaded Radio's Johnny Rude, who joins us live from Las Vegas, Nevada, to discuss the week that was in hard rock and metal. Johnny, how you doing, man?
I'm just opened something up. Gordy Lewis.
Yeah, I was going to talk to you about Gordy Lewis.
Did it say how Lewis's body was found?
Here's the weird thing with that. About a week ago, I saw a message on Gord's Facebook, because we're friends on Facebook, saying that Gord Lewis passed away by taking his own life, and I think the Facebook was hacked by his kid, and I was like, that was strange. So and I checked the news. I never heard anything on the news, and there was no confirmation or anything. And then just yesterday, I see on the news Gord Lewis, it was found dead in his apartment in Hamilton, Ontario, and his son has been charged with second-degree murder. Now, I know his son had some like psychological problems and stuff like that. But I guess from what I'm gathering, he hacked his dad's Facebook about a week ago and sort of set up this whole thing as a suicide, maybe. And then he killed his dad, I guess, his body was only discovered a few days ago. There's no word on what day he died, but also his kid went and contacted a whole bunch of media outlets, like online media outlets, as well as local radio stations and stuff, and told them the same thing. So I don't know. It's obviously a deep psychological problem with this guy. It's always sort of been there, but I mean, just a shame, because I knew Gord Lewis personally.
I knew these guys years ago. I'm just reading here. It said the police had initially been unable to identify the body because of the stage of decomposition. So he was there for a while. Like you just said,
yeah,
his son, portrayed himself, like you said, on Facebook, he was portraying his father.
Yeah.
And it said, so it's unclear exactly when he died. The police have it happen to about 2 or 3 days prior to him being discovered.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's about 5 days ago when I first saw that message, because again, I knew Gord. He was a sweet guy. We were friends, especially when I was living in Hamilton. And and I saw that, and it was like saying Gord took his own life. And that just didn't sound like something Gord would do. I mean, I know everybody says that, but it just knowing him, he was really doing well. He had Teenage Head going with Dave Rave singing in the band, and they were doing okay. They were doing gigs, and he was a well-known guy in Hamilton. He was like a staple in Hamilton in the music scene, and he was doing really well that way. So it didn't make sense. But then when I heard that yesterday, I was like, yeah, it was Jonathan. It was his kid that took his life. Now, I don't know how he did it or anything like that.
No, it's not saying. I've not read anything on that. I'm sure that'll come out. But it says he's been charged, like you said, 2nd-degree murder. And that basically means that it was intended, but it wasn't premeditated. So. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think that's kind of the psychological aspect of it, maybe.
Well, again, if you plan on killing somebody, that's the premeditation. That's first-degree murder. Yeah. And this could have been a fist fight they got into, an argument. They could have been bickering, son and father over years and years of stuff. And maybe he slugged his dad in the head with, a candlestick or something. I don't know. But yes, It's not premeditated, but it was intended. So he attacked him, obviously. And then I think he's tried to figure it out, in the last 3, 4, 5 days of what do I do?
Yeah, well, I mean, again, the guy has been struggling with, I know, deep psychological issues for a while now. I'm sure maybe something set him off.
Possibly.
But yeah, I mean, I'm sure the last few days since he posted that message, and he was reaching out to media outlets. So he was trying to maybe cover his tracks as a suicide or something. I don't know. I mean, more is going to come out, obviously. Yeah. But I'm still kind of in shock. It's blown my mind about this whole thing, man, because he was just, I mean, maybe to people listening outside of Canada, maybe would not know Teenage Head as well as, say, you and I would, even though you're in Las Vegas, of course. But they were such an influential band in the 80s, early 80s, I'd say, late 70s, early 80s.
Oh yeah, late 70s, dude. I'll let me just jump in here. I knew about Teenage Head, it's 78. They used to play downtown at the El Macombo. They were, they played all these little punk bars, Larry's Hideaway back in the day. They were just
Horseshoe. They had a legendary gig at the Horseshoe, buddy.
Yep. And they also, memory serves me correctly, I'm going back now, they were going to get a big, massive record deal. And Gord Lewis broke his back. That's so right. He couldn't tour. And David Bendeth, who is he signed Breaking Benjamin. He was a Canadian guy, worked for BMG Music. At one point in time, he was looking at one of my projects years ago. But he stepped in, and this would have been 78, 79, that he stepped in, and he was the band's guitar player just to fulfill obligations. But they were on the cusp of being the Canadian Sex Pistols, so to speak, Teenage Head, and Gord Lewis broke his back. I remember watching the New Music back in the day with, J.D. Roberts and Gene Becker, and they would go out, and it was Teenage Head. It was a big, big deal. You had Rush, and Triumph, and then you had Teenage Head, and they were huge, and then it just didn't happen for them, and they kind of fell off the wayside there after that accident with Gord Lewis.
Yeah, and I think that was around the time, and I could be wrong, but they did a gig at what was it, for those listening? It's now called the Budweiser Stage. It used to be called the Molson Amphitheater. John, what was it before? Was it the Forum, or what? It was like the circular?
Oh yeah, it was the Forum where you'd sit there and you'd see a show and it would just turn around slowly. I saw hundreds of cool bands there. I mean, I saw Ray Charles there.
Did you really?
Greg Godovitz. I saw Gatto play there. Yeah, that was amazing. I mean,
Teenage Head played a gig at the Forum. I think it might have been 1978. The Teenage Head played the gig at the Forum, and it was such a capacity, mad, insane crowd. Put them on the map, man. It was such a huge, huge, huge gig, and I think that they almost caused a riot at the Horseshoe, which is a very legendary club in downtown Toronto. For those listening who don't know Toronto, obviously, but it's a legendary venue. The Rolling Stones have played there even. And they almost caused a riot on Queen Street West, where that club is, with them playing a night. And so they were a big deal. They were going to be huge, John, like you were saying.
They were. They were on the cusp of signing a massive record deal, and they were going to be Canada's answer to the Sex Pistols or the Clash or whatever, that whole punk movement that came out. Yeah. And then, I can't believe it's weird how the brain works. That I remember this. Gordy broke his back and just kiboshed the whole thing. Just a sad state of affairs, man. But they could have been huge. And then you got Frankie Venom.
Frankie Venom, the front man, yeah.
Yeah, he went on, did some solo stuff, but it could never capture it. And now Teenage Head goes down in Canadian history of one of those really cool bands that, it didn't happen for them.
Well, Frankie Venom died, 10, 15 years ago, another Hamilton local guy. And I mean, the memory I have of Teenage Head is, remember when you and I worked at that one club in the East End of Toronto, which we don't really like to talk about.
Right.
But we were working there, and Teenage Head played there one night, and I was bringing them on stage. And this is when Frankie Venom was still alive. And I went backstage there, and they were the four of them were sitting there. Remember they had that little green room off to the side near the washrooms? Yeah. So I went in there and I opened up the door.
You could have a bath back there.
Yeah, that's right. I opened up the door, and the four of them were just sitting there, and Frankie Venom stares at me, and I'm like, "Oh, hey guys, just I'm Scott Penfold from such and such radio station. I'm going to be bringing you on stage, and it's really good to see you." And Frankie Venom just looks at me and goes, "Fuck off." And you know amazing. What? A lot of people would have been offended by that, but I thought it was fucking cool that Frankie Venom from Teenage Head told me to fuck off. Of course I brought them on stage.
Of course, still being a punk rocker, right? Yeah,
totally, man. And it was great. Now he's the late Frankie Venom, like I was saying. They were still great even in their later days, John, when they were playing gigs like that. They were still fucking great. Like songs like Let's Shake and Picture My Face, like just some really great
It was all
tunes.
Cool stuff, dude. It was a sign of the times back then, and they were perfectly lined up for it.
Yeah.
It's again, that would have been maybe 2009 or so.
That would have been 2009. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Something like that. But yeah, still going, doing their thing. And I've just caught this today about Gord Lewis. That is a weird story I literally just read it, and I'm like, holy crap, man. Gord Lewis's son kills him. Bizarro.
Yeah, and it's kind of creepy. It's like it's one of those things where there are those deaths in the music scene that you all hear about, those legendary ones like Marvin Gaye getting killed by his father or whatever, and it's kind of just lines up with that kind of thing where the son with psychological problems, and he was in a punk band, and it's kind of, it adds to that, almost to that kind of creepy mystique, which I hate to say and sensationalize in any way, but it sort of adds to the mystique of that punk band that was Teenage Head.
Right. I'm just going to correct something for us here, Scott.
Yeah.
It says, I'm just reading something, though Venom died in 2008. So it would have been 2008 you did that, because he could have died at any point in time.
That's right. Yeah. So, you and I were working at that joint. And we
were there for a couple of years doing our rock and roll nights there.
Yeah.
But yeah, dude, very weird. And again, just when I was talking to you earlier, not that a lot of people know this dude, but a good friend of ours, the original Kid Rock. He had this name kicking around for years before Kid Rock out of Detroit did. Keith Correa. He was telling me he passed away. He was a who's who, man, in Toronto. He got to hang with everybody, take pictures with everybody. He was a cool guy, man.
He knew. He actually knew Kid Rock. Kid Rock told him he was allowed to use the name and stuff.
Absolutely, he did. There's pictures of him. If you can find him, the original Kid Rock with Kid Rock.
Yeah.
So that's weird too, and that's, like I said, we talked about that earlier, and then I read this about Gord Lewis. So R.I.P. to both those people, and a good friend of ours being Keith Kid Rock Correa.
I guess to really expand on who Keith Correa was, for those in Toronto, I mean, any live show, any rock live show, he was there. He would dress in, how would you explain the way he dressed?
The
John?
Loudest outfit possible.
That's right.
He would,
yeah.
That was his MO, his gig. And he's doing it for years, but the loudest thing you could possibly find, green, purple, orange, red, and tartan all at once,
and with the Randy Savage sunglasses,
yes.
You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, and the bleach blonde hair, and he was a character. He was a cool guy, great sense of humor, and if you took a picture with him, he'd always throw on these goofy sunglasses on you.
Yeah,
and you'd go, hey, enough.
And I put a message on my personal Facebook saying Keith John Correa passed away and all this stuff, and it's amazing just because I've got like about 5,000 friends on my Facebook. Facebook. And it's amazing how, looking at the amount of people that he knew, I mean, there are people replying to saying that they loved him that I didn't even think he knew, but that's how big he stretched. I mean, he was promoting gigs. Like, he promoted my first club gig at Machine Head, man. Like, he got me that gig there on Saturday nights, which was a bomb. But I mean, it was, he got
still,
me.
That's just the guy he was. But he was, we'll go back to like the original Rock and Roll Heaven. You go back to RPM, you go back to the Docks. He was everywhere. The
Docks, especially. Yeah.
I mean, with Randy Charlton and everybody out there that were putting these shows on, but everybody knew him, man. And, that's a sad one when you told me that. But yeah, he was quite the character. And again, you'd never miss him. If who's that guy? Oh, that's Kid Rock. Oh, I heard about him. That's him. Yeah, that's him, man. Just really flamboyant and the loudest outfit ever.
Yeah, he dressed almost like a wrestler manager.
Yeah, just crazy. Yeah, I mean, but that was him. That's what he did.
Yeah, and I guess it hasn't been confirmed how he died, but I mean, from what I've heard from people is that he had cancer, like obviously a tragic form of cancer. And he didn't tell anybody because he kept doing what he was doing. I mean, right. as soon as August the 5th, there's a post on his Facebook page of him out at an event, man. And he's out doing his thing. Right. Like, so it really did shock a lot of people.
Yeah. If he had cancer, some people are like, they want to let you know and they're advocates and I'm a survivor. And some people they keep it to themselves and they're private and they don't want you to feel sorry for them. I'm still the same person. So they go out and do the thing. And if that's the case, that's how he chose to represent himself with that awful disease.
Well, look at Norm Mcdonald, another prime example of that, right? So
yeah, I know a few people like that, man. All of a sudden you hear they died and it's like, what? Oh, he had cancer or she had cancer. Wow, I didn't know. Yeah, that's just how they did it. Again, then you get other people like Olivia Newton-John, man. She died yesterday.
That's right.
And she was someone who talked about cancer since the onset. 92, I think she had it. And people treat it differently, dude. So yeah. Interesting.
All right, don't forget to check out loadedradio.com for all your hard rock and metal news, as well as the 24-hour stream and, of course, the podcast, past episodes of this podcast, and so much more content for you. Just a click away, it's loadedradio.com. Also, don't forget to download the Loaded Radio app where you can listen to the radio station wherever you go, and as well, the podcast, and get all your stuff right to your device. Get that wherever you get your apps, or at loadedradio.com as well, okay? So on behalf of Johnny Rude and everybody else at Loaded Radio and loadedradio.com, I'm Scott Penfold, and we'll talk to you next week right here on another edition of the Loaded Radio Podcast.
Loaded Radio.